Oh, hi everyone. Okay, we are now live. Let me share this out. Just type hello, where you're from. Say hi. Right. So I think for those who have been following my page now, you know that tonight I'm premiering the very first talk where we're going to be talking about parenting. So just in case that you don't know what kind of talk that I'll be doing, basically it's not really my talk. Okay, it's a campaign whereby I'll be inviting, and I've invited experts from various aspects of life, basically, to guide us and teach us how to better master that specific area. Because I think for those who know me also, right, you guys know that I'm not like a person who believes knowing metaphysics itself is the core of everything, okay? And if you know metaphysics itself, if you are a metaphysician or if you practice metaphysics, we are not just influenced by just what is given to us, but also a lot at our environment. And by environment, okay, it means how we grow up, where we grow up with, who we grow up with, and things like that. So today, that is the reason why, okay, I'm gonna be talking about parenting with a friend of mine, okay, and I'm gonna be introducing her to you guys, okay. So, but now, most importantly is, okay, I need you guys to share this video out, give some likes, okay, and because this topic today we're gonna be talking is something quite interesting, and I think it's very, very important for an adult and also for a child. In fact, and the topic today, if you have followed my Facebook, you would know today I'm going to be talking about conscious parenting. And I think parenting itself, it's so crucial at my perspective, personally at least, right? It's so important because it's not just important for you as a parent, but for us as an adult, because I consider myself a parent for my own. Okay, so it's very important for us to understand. And sometimes I really have a lot of questions about parenting, whether it can be so-called like undone, whether it can be better and things like that. So before I invite her, okay, please share the video out, get as many people as we can to talk and share this video, okay? So give some thumbs up, give some comments, okay? Talk something, okay? Because it's really not usual time for live, okay? It's evening time on Saturday. I hope you guys already have your dinner, okay? So without further ado, okay, let's welcome Shireen, okay? And let me pull her in. Okay, hi Shireen.
Hi, Esther. How are you doing?
I'm good. So tonight we'll be talking about conscious parenting, and it's a very interesting topic. I think quite many people, in fact, I think it's kind of, to me, I think it's like one of the foundation of life, parenting itself. That's the reason why I think I am so keen to actually talk to you about this and ask you lots of questions. And guys, just to give a brief introduction about Shireen, okay? She's actually a board certified clinical psychologist, and her main focus is actually on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. I think it's a very popular method, right? And also mindfulness that facilitates patients in dealing with psychological concerns. So Shireen's very strong in therapeutic relationship kind of sessions, and she also emphasized on empathy and empowerment. Okay, she believes in people wanting to be happy, effective, and successful in their life, right? So basically, she's very passionate in helping others to the path of healing and leading a personally satisfying life, okay? So yes, for guys please share this video out before we start delivering the main contents of the whole talk, all right? So Shireen, welcome to my humble little page.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to answer all of your exciting questions for today.
Yeah.
Definitely an interesting topic, conscious parenting.
Yes. I would love to understand more really because personally I'm very into uh, inner child work as well. So I have lots of questions with regards to this, and that is the reason why I find parenting is so important, right? So let's begin, okay, with understanding how do you describe in your way, in a professional way, right? How do you describe effective parenting and ineffective parenting?
All right, that's actually a really great question. Thank you for that. Looking at effective parenting, well, what they do is that they always want to discuss with their children, meaning that the children knows what's the rules. Because when children are able to know, okay, this is the rule, then they also know what to expect. And when children can understand, okay, this is the rule, this is what I can expect, they also know, okay, this is the consequences if I break the rules. So, right there, there's a boundary being set. So, effective parenting, in a way, what they teach their children at a very young age is that if you do this behavior or that behavior, you are actually choosing the consequence to it. So children actually learn that it's not just out of the blue something happens, meaning they get punished or this or that. It's all explained to them. And when we talk about ineffective parenting, this is where they just assume that, oh, children should know that. But how would they know that if they were not explained that or if they weren't taught that? So that's why it becomes ineffective because the parents might just forget that that's a rule. So, example, let's say if the mom and dad have said, okay, no ice cream for breakfast. But then, the child says, oh, I want it, I want it, I want it. And the parents now say, okay, fine, you can have it. Do you see how that's confusing for the child? Because every day you say no, but one day you say yes. So now the child will learn, oh, it's no, but if I keep asking and asking and asking, it's a yes. And if parents
So
themselves don't stick, yes.
basically, it's
Sorry?
creating a contradictory situations for the child.
Exactly. Because then imagine the child is going to be, in a way, walking on eggshells, right? Because one day it's a yes, one day it's a no. So they become kind of scared as well. If I make a mistake, am I going to get punished for that today? Because yesterday you didn't punish me, but 2 days ago you did. So that makes the child actually lose their own self confidence, their own self esteem, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety. So that's one of the main differences when we talk about effective parenting and ineffective parenting. It's that with effective parenting, it's very clear cut. There are rules, there are boundaries, and they explain to the child what's going on. With ineffective parenting, it's sort of I explain sometimes, I don't explain sometimes. It depends on my mood, and maybe I'll follow the rule today, but maybe I won't follow the rule
I
tomorrow.
see. So parents got to be really consistent with what rules they set then.
Yes. If you're setting a rule as a parent, you basically need to follow through. Because if you're saying it's a no for this, but then if your child basically just yells and screams and throws a temper tantrum and then you give in, you as a parent are actually teaching your child every time I throw a temper tantrum, mommy or daddy will give me what I want.
I see. Okay. So a lot have to do with the parent itself at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, they're the adults. They're responsible for the child. We can't be having the child sort of at a young age parenting themselves. So parents, very important to just sort of know that guideline of what's effective, what's not going to be effective.
Yeah, okay. But why is parenting so important and what is truly the consequences of this ineffective parenting, in for the child and as the child when they grow up as an adult?
All right. So why parenting is so important is because essentially, right, when you look at parenting, there's three main aspects. The first would be the parent is responsible to protect the child from harm because the child is still too young to do that for themselves.
Mhm.
And when we talk about care, it's not just about physical health, it's also about their emotional health. That's where this mental health can also play a part. And the second aspect of that would also be looking at it's the parents' job to make sure that they are enforcing boundaries, meaning that the child learns, okay, I can do this, I can't do this, and I am allowed to explore the world. So when they explore the world, meaning they make friends, they go for social activities, they learn sports, all of that is expanding their world. And that is the job of a parent to actually expose their child to things like this. So to start off with, that's why parenting is so important because it has to do with that foundation. And another aspect of that is that when children actually grow up with secure parenting, meaning it's a very
Mhm.
healthy environment with their parents, in the
Mhm.
long run, what happens is that they grow up to have better relationships with other people because they already learned from a young age how to handle stress, how to regulate their emotions. So overall, if a child grew up in a happy environment, a happy, healthy environment, you'll see that they're more optimistic, they're more confident in social behaviors, and overall, even academically, it can affect them. So they tend to do better. And consequences, right, of
Yeah.
ineffective parenting is that you're going to have children essentially that grow up, but they don't know what to do with their emotional needs. They find it really difficult to problem solve, and they probably aren't able to cope with stressful situations. So, for instance, children might either lead to, let's say, substance abuse, or maybe they
Mhm.
experience more depression symptoms, more anxiety symptoms. And the thing is, if they don't have a parent there actually guiding them through this, overall, when they grow up, they can view the world as a very scary and unstable place.
Yeah, and is it partly because the you see from my understanding from what you say, it seems like it's because children has view life through the lens of a relationship with the parents and through their own parenting, and then when they grow up, they kind of duplicate that way in terms and they manifest the flavor of the parenting through relationships and also social life and also in their career. So it seems like ineffective parenting can lead to many things.
Yes, that definitely can happen. And an aspect there to also look into is sometimes it can be the opposite, meaning, let's say
Mhm.
two brothers, okay, grew up with
Yeah.
the same father, and the father was
Hmm.
an alcoholic. But
Hmm.
one brother could grow up to not touch alcohol at all, and the other brother could grow up to be an alcoholic just like the father. And when you ask both of these brothers why
Uh-huh.
why why do you drink or why do you not drink, one
Hmm.
might say, oh, because I grew up watching my father, he was an alcoholic, so I didn't want to touch alcohol. But the other one who became an alcoholic might say, oh, because I watched my father growing up, so I just learned from him. So
Mm.
that's the thing as well. There can be a potential to pick up that bad behavior, that consequences that they learn it. But there's also the aspect where they find it so uncomfortable that they had to grow up in that environment that they want no part to do with that as an adult. So they do the complete opposite.
So that's not healthy either, right? Because it boils down to the extreme of both ends.
In a way, it could just lead to a lot of unresolved trauma. So, for instance, let's say if someone grew up with a lot of yelling in their household, but
Uh-huh.
then as an adult, perhaps now the extreme is that they just can't deal with conflict. Even a little bit of
Oh.
conflict, it just gives them such anxiety. They just have to run off in a way
They don't like conflict, right?
because it takes them right back to that childhood aspect. So that's where it can actually be a bit of a trigger, because imagine if now this person is, let's say, married, and anytime their partner is trying to conflict resolution on some topic, but they just can't handle it. So they run off, they just shut down.
Oh, so technically, wow, it seems quite, I don't know, is it, it sounds to me, it's, you really need to be very cautious about how you are in front of your child then.
Yes, because children are like sponges, they basically pick up during those younger days. That's when they're learning all about the world. And that's actually when they learn a lot of those core beliefs. So their core beliefs could teach them, I am safe, I am secured,
Mm,
or it could also teach them, I can't trust people and the world is a scary place.
mm. That is when I mean, this term is very commonly used, like the child's unmet needs. When they have these unmet needs, they tend to either incline, like what you say, either the one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum, and that creates a lot of different dynamics in their life in many aspects, how they relate to work, how they relate to relationships and stuff like that. Okay, that's very, it sounds to me it's already quite complicated actually to, because you know why, the next thing that is come on mind is like, there's so many different type of children, there's so many different type of personality, and that is where Chinese metaphysics, what I do actually comes by, because I do deal with clients who actually want to have a better relationship with their children, or maybe they want to understand how to parent their children better based on their core personality. Because what I do, we actually look at charts and we understand the personality. But there comes the psychology part, whereby how to ensure the children are parented effectively to bring out the best version of who they are. Because, I think parents these days are quite open-minded. Okay, it's not like back then in my generation at least, whereby parents like to impose what they want into us. Nowadays is slightly different, I think. So with what you were saying, everything comes putting thoughts in my mind. There's so many different children's. How would you manage them differently? What kind, like sensitive children who doesn't like to express themselves, children who only know how to express themselves through throwing tantrums, things like that. What advice would you give to parents to deal with different type of children?
All right. So, well, that's a really good question because every child is unique in their own way. So, just to start off with, it's really important for parents to accept each child as they are. Because if you're trying to do, let's say, sometimes families have 3 kids and all 3 kids have such different personality traits. And if you're
Yeah.
trying to treat all of them the exact same way, well, what's going to happen is that they're all going to feel a little bit unaccepted in a way, or they're going to feel a bit suppressed because they are not being seen and heard for who they truly are. So, for example, let's say with a sensitive child, right? What
Yeah.
does that actually mean is that emotionally they're sensitive. So they're becoming overwhelmed very easily. They might cry a bit more than the other child, they worry a little bit more, and maybe they require a lot of reassurance. The reason for that is because they're feeling all of their emotions so intensely. So imagine they're getting like very excited, they're getting very
Mm-hmm.
angry, and they're getting extremely scared. So for a sensitive child, it's really important for parents, rather than trying to say to the child, oh, just stop crying or stop being so scared. It's important for parents to just acknowledge that the child
Oh.
is going through that, and one aspect of that is because when they can acknowledge what the child is going through, They're
Mm-hmm.
letting the child know that their needs are being heard. Like, you're scared. I hear that you're scared. Let's figure out how can we work on this together. So a really good way for sensitive kids, or well, for how parents can support sensitive kids would be, see, sensitive kids tend to get very like overstimulated by large crowds, like bright lights,
Oh,
a lot of chaotic
yeah,
environments. So
noises and stuff.
yes. So it's important for parents to already know if their child is sensitive to that, then don't overschedule your child. You can't be having like breakfast, some loud music in the house, and then lunch, a new play date, and then dinner, something new. The child is just going to have a complete meltdown because it's too much. So even at the home environment, what they can
Mm.
do for that child is they can create something like a peace corner. So it's a space where the child can have their quiet activities, like a coloring book, headphones with some soothing music,
Is it
or
like an alone time thing?
it is an alone time, but it's not a punishment. It's more of, this is a corner for you that has all of your favorite things that makes you feel really great. So like a book that they like to read. So
Mm.
imagine the child is feeling overwhelmed, right?
Mm.
So what they can do is, hey, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like it's in the house right now, you're feeling that everyone in the house is a bit loud, well, then this is your corner where it's going to be quiet. And look, you've got headphones with calming music, so you can put that on and then you can color in your book, and this is just your peace corner.
Mm. Okay, but how is it that parents would know that the child is having this kind of sensitivity? Child, I mean, as a children, do they express well in terms of how sensitive they are?
For that, it's important for parents to be able to observe their children, because if they notice that, oh, their child is always having a meltdown when it's a large crowd, or when,
Mm.
it's a bit noisy, things like that, then as a parent, it's important to be in tune to your child's needs, because there isn't necessarily a test that's going to say, yes, your child ticked off all of this, so they are sensitive to bright lights. It's more of,
Mm.
oh, if you notice, every time you take your child to a shopping mall, your child
Mm.
is having a meltdown. But how come when you
Mm.
take your child to, the next door neighbor's house, there's no
Mm.
meltdown? So you want to figure out what is causing that meltdown. And of course, if your child is old enough to verbalize, ask
Mm.
the child, because they themselves would be able to let you know, like perhaps, oh, it was just too much, too many people, too loud.
Mm.
And those are
Mm.
all cues that parents can pick up on. If a child just
Mm.
keeps saying the same thing again, too noisy, okay, you know that your child is already finding, maybe you find it to be normal noise level, but your child keeps saying it's too noisy.
There's a lot of awareness required there, and a lot of observations, right?
Yes, that's why parenting, when it's effective, there is a certain amount of time that the parent actually needs to spend with their child. Because if a parent is
Mm.
only around for, let's say, 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening, how do they know anything about their child then? How would they be able to actually say, what does the child like to eat? What's their favorite toy? What scares them? Then they wouldn't be the go-to person. It will be more of whoever is taking care of the child, like that main caregiver. That person would then know the best way.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Right. So now that is how parents can manage and learn to, you know, manage their sensitive child. But how about there's this one type of child that comes in my mind is, how about those who do not express anything? Like for me, example, me being when I was young, I have this very good way of not expressing things. Like I do not know how to express myself when I was young, and I don't say anything. Like I just keep everything inside. And yeah, so how do you advise parents to manage child like this? Because they don't say anything. Parents can't observe anything.
Yes. So in a way, that's already an observation then that the parent just made, which is that, hey, my child really isn't expressing much. So they're non-expressive, right? And if your child is like that, what can be really helpful is, as a parent, you need to know that you can help your child by actually teaching them how can they learn and understand their emotions better so that they're able to talk more about it. So for example, feelings. A lot of
Mm,
children feel things, but they don't know how to express that. So let's
mm,
say, as a parent, what you can do is you can start saying, "Oh, your friend snatched your favorite toy. Were you angry because you seemed angry by that?" Or example, when mommy has to go to work, you're sad to say goodbye. So the
mm.
parent is actually teaching the child this, and then the child learns through that. Oh, okay, when mommy goes,
Ah.
is sad. And a really good way to teach children this is by using pictures or books or videos, because that's where the children can see face expressions.
I
So
see.
something that can really help is showing them, like all the different smiley faces. One might be like an angry face, it's all red and, scrunched up. And then
Mm-hmm.
teaching the child, okay, so this is happy, this is angry. And then the child actually understands when they're feeling something, they can say, oh, I'm feeling angry because that's what, right? It's like the red face and all of that. So when parents actually teach their children about feelings, they're actually helping their children build that emotional vocabulary. So
Oh.
over time, children find it easier for them on their own to talk to you as a parent about their emotions. And that's just the basic of them expressing themselves. So, again, even if they're not saying much, but
Mm-hmm.
that is already an observation that the parent made. Hey, my child doesn't really express too much. What can I
Mm.
do as a parent to facilitate that?
Mm. Right. So will you see, will these things from this is a thing that as you describe, right? The children, sorry, will also so-called like mirror the personality of the parents or people around them. Like when it comes to if the child is surrounded or always observe how the parents are not expressive themselves, will they themselves become not expressive as well?
There always is a possibility of that because they learn from parents,
Mm,
basically their environment. If the parent was not around, and let's say it was a helper or a grandparent, and if any one of these people was very aggressive in how they expressed,
mm-hmm.
that's what the child might learn, that this is how I express through aggression. So it is important for parents to sort of set that baseline of talking about emotions, because the best way to teach your child something is to set a good example yourself as a parent. So if you as a parent can start talking about your own feelings, if you can describe how you express those feelings, then you're giving your child actually a lot of different opportunities to learn, to grow, and to discuss with you what is appropriate and what's not. Meaning, okay, let's say mommy got mad yesterday because the kitchen sink got clogged up. But when mommy gets mad, mommy will take a deep breath and count to three and think about the best way to solve the problem. So
Mm,
she's, as a mom, she's letting the child know, yes, I got angry, but this is how I deal with it. So the child will also then learn when they
mm,
get angry, they can take a deep breath, count to three, and think about it, not just throw a temper tantrum.
right. So being a good example, basically. Right.
Yes.
So how about child who, this is quite a common one, I think, and we can I personally see that quite a lot about Angry children, angry, the ones that just throw tantrums. I think there's two types. I usually see the aggressive. I do not know whether I could classify this type of children into one type, because to me it's slightly more aggressive kind of children. Like, when aggressive meaning is like hyperactive kind, they're like jumping around all the time, and they are just happy by damaging things, throwing things. When they're happy, they throw things and they jump around all over the places, break things around. There's another type of aggression, is the angry type of aggression. So how would you advise parents to deal with this type of children?
So looking at that, right, with aggressive children, and let's talk about first the ones that are a bit violent, like kicking, biting, hitting.
Yeah.
So it's really important for parents to immediately set that boundary, set that limit. So letting the child know this is not okay. And immediately, because the parent is responsible for setting the rule. Imagine if a child is going around biting people and the parent just says, oh, well, he's just a child, but then how is it the child's fault? Because the child doesn't know that it's bad, that it's wrong, because the parent is not setting a rule. So immediately when a child does, let's say, a bad behavior, such as kicking, biting, hitting, anything like that, you want to immediately let the child know this isn't okay. And
Mm-hmm.
if they do that, in that instance, you have to immediately give them a consequence. So it could be a timeout, letting them know that their favorite toy is going to be taken away for, let's say, like 5 minutes, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the consequence is, it has to be immediate so that the child can also understand, oh, because I did that, this is my consequence. And talking to the child about it, so meaning, do you know why you're getting punished? Why is it wrong, or why is it bad to bite people? How could that affect the other person? So making the child also understand that when I do that, I'm hurting somebody else. And
Okay.
that's where parents can actually start teaching children like right and wrong behaviors.
All right. So how would you say? Because I see a lot that parents will scold their children.
Looking at that, right, it can also be very helpful to just help the child find a new way to deal with their anger. Because if you're saying that the child is angry, so they start hitting somebody, okay, perhaps we can ask the child, can you explain why you became so angry? Because what we're seeing as the adult, or maybe what the parent is seeing is, my child just suddenly, started hitting the little sister. But perhaps when you ask the child why, the child might say, oh, like she took my favorite toy. You just need to know what actually triggered the child. And when you know that, then you can teach the child as well. Okay, if your little sister took away your favorite toy without asking you, then you can let her know that she should ask you first. And if she still doesn't listen to you, then you can come to mommy and mommy can, you know, help you. But if you start to hit her, then that again is not like right behavior.
Yeah.
So again, wanting the child to understand that they have options. It's not just I'm angry, so I do this. No, you're angry, you can do this, you can do that. But we always want the child to know that hitting, kicking, biting, throwing things is just unacceptable behavior. And when you talked about those hyperactive children,
Yeah.
so something that can be really helpful there is, what kind of a diet is that child on? If you're giving them sugary items all day and now they're just super hyper, well, you as a parent need to also take responsibility. You're giving the child such high sugar content foods. So they are just filled with energy and they're just bouncing off the walls. If at all, that's something that, as a parent, you realize, oh, maybe I do give my child, this morning cookies or ice cream for lunch. Just cut all of that out. No more sugar, And another aspect is if you still notice that your child has a lot of energy, then it's really great to sign your child up for some sort of activities where he or she can actually just get all of that energy out of them, like karate class, boxing, running, basketball,
Mm,
things that might tire them out. Swimming is also really great. So when
I
they have, yeah, so when they have a channel where they can actually put all that energy into, sometimes what can happen is because that's where they now get to be so energetic, they can actually excel at that sport or activity a lot more. So it
mm,
gives them that drive, that motivation, and that discipline. And at the same time, you don't need to then, sort of have to deal with some child like running and bouncing up and down the walls.
yeah, in Chinese metaphysics, there's this because there's this we read children's character based on Chinese metaphysics, and one of it is about this aggressive children kind. We call them. There's a name for it. So basically, to also there is also because we understand the needs of the children of the aggressive type of children. So and usually these type of children, when they grow up, they make really good sportsmen, by the way. So when you mention about putting them into sports and diverting their attention, uh, it's very similar to what
Yes.
from what we are reading and understanding is because yeah, usually that's why we will say put the children at some disciplinary or competitive kind of activities, swimming, karate, anything like that. It will help the children to divert their active energy to it.
Yes, that overactiveness in that
Yeah.
sense. And then
Yes.
they're learning control.
Yes. But that being said, right? So this is all just now whatever that you describe is on children, right? And I believe whatever you describe, it also takes time for the method to be effective. Example, like what you mentioned, parents should talk to their children and advise them and understand why they are doing it. It does take time, right? This kind of process. It's not like a one-time thing because I've talked to children before, and sometimes going to like asking them. Sometimes they don't even sit down and listen to you. They just don't take you seriously, So it does take time, right? This kind of process.
Definitely, because you need to always have that bond with the child. So if you're starting off with, someone that's a child that's very hyper and this is at 8 years old, well, you're probably going to have a lot more work cut out for you than if you were doing this with a child who's, let's say, 2 years old.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, so dear viewers, if you are listening to this, all this kind of thing, it requires time and I would say consistency in your
Yes.
what you were saying, consistency in your message. The boundaries has to be consistent as well, right? Otherwise, the
Yeah,
child will be confused.
absolutely. Consistency is key.
Right. So now, just now, whatever you described is referring to children. Now, I would like to also understand in adults because I think, like you've mentioned many times, that the consequence can in effective parenting, you can see the consequences of it in the adult life, right? So, how would you describe an adult that was exposed to effective parenting method as a child? Is there like a symptom thing that we can see like in straight in the face kind very easily?
So it would be more of looking at what's lying underneath. Meaning, let's say if a child had effective parenting, they're probably going to be a very secured adult. And when I
Mm.
say secured adult, it means they don't have trust issues. They are able to understand that they are good enough. They feel secured, so they're not worried about being abandoned. And they are able to set very clear boundaries. So they're not people pleasers. The reason for that is because they know I am enough, I am worthy, I am lovable. So they grew up with that safety foundation. And what happens there is overall, they're just able to express themselves very well. They're able to deal with conflict well. They're able to allow people into their lives and actually have a, a meaningful connection. And they're not scared that people are going to leave them because they're secured as adults. But on the flip side, let's say if you grew up with that ineffective parenting, what's going to happen is you can either have inner child wounds. So, this is where I always talk about that inner child work because as an adult, if you still have wounds from your childhood, all that happens is that you have this wounded inner child within you, and you've never really acknowledged the emotional scars that you went through as a child. So now you're just acting out all of your pain onto those around you, even though they're not the issue. It's just that you're being triggered by something in your past.
Mm.
And an example of this would actually be if you have an inner child wound, there's four aspects that we can identify this in. It's the abandonment wound, the guilt wound, the trust wound, and the
Mm.
neglect wound. And each one of these different categories can show up as an adult. So if you're asking how do we identify it, right? This would be a really good example. Let's say if you meet an adult and they have the abandonment wound. As an
Mm.
adult, they would always have this fear that someone's going to leave them. They would hate being alone. They always feel left out and they become very codependent. So, meaning codependent on friends or maybe even their romantic partners. And an aspect of that is that whenever there's conflict or even if they're just not feeling loved, they might just threaten to leave. So it becomes, oh, you know what? I can't handle this right now. I'm just going to go. That is how you would actually identify, oh, that looks like the abandonment wound in an adult. And most of the time, they normally attract people who are emotionally unavailable. So it complements each other. They're worried that they're going to get abandoned. So the people that they tend to gravitate towards, they are there, but emotionally they're not there. So
Oh
they
my
keep
God.
so they keep acting out that childhood trauma of I was always abandoned either physically or emotionally, and now their romantic partners doing the same thing.
Oh my God. So there's this thing, that's why I do meet a lot of people who they keep saying that why do I keep attracting the same type of partner each time, and each time she breaks up, it's for the same old reason because the man can't commit, or the man feels that he needs a breather, or things like that. So that is partly because of the kind of energy that she attracts.
It's pretty much that she has some sort of probably an emotional wound from her childhood. It's not being addressed. So, what's happening now is that she's just acting out that trauma with different romantic partners. And if you notice, there's a common theme, right? All of
Mm-hmm.
the men keep saying, I just can't commit right now. So, in a way, they abandon her.
Mm. Oh
And
my God.
looking at that, it could actually be really beneficial just to ask her, did she ever feel abandoned by any parental figure growing up? What was her relationship like with her mother and her father? Because there's actually such a thing as the mother wound and the father wound as well. And
Oh.
this can also show up in an adult. So, an example of that, let's say if you grew up with a mother that wasn't really around, not that book version of how you would describe that mother. Well, what can happen is that as an adult, you find that you can't really set boundaries. It's very difficult for you to let people know I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this. So you always
Mm,
yes in a way. You're always a people pleaser. And
mm,
another aspect is you always try to save someone else. So you're playing the savior role
mm,
because,
mm.
in a way, When you were young, you were always waiting for someone to save you. So as an adult, you now try to fix people, you try to rescue them, or you try to control other people.
Mm, right. Okay. That's very interesting. I think many people can actually relate to that, you know.
Probably, and that's the thing, right? A lot of them may see that this is just how they are. So the
Yeah.
mother wound can sometimes be that invisible wound. It's just passed on from generation to generation, and the person might not be aware of it. But if you talk to someone and if they're saying, oh, I always feel I have to play the peacemaker, or I feel very unworthy of myself. I feel very threatened by other women, or I feel ashamed of my body, or shaming others for their body. These are all signs of the mother wound.
Okay. So all this affect an adult, and like you say, as an adult, if you don't heal that side of you, you know, it will also pass down to your future generation because you will
Yes.
act that way as well, right? So now, can the adults undo what they went through in the childhood, and can they heal it? Because we can't go back to the past and undo whatever that have happened. So can it be done? Can we reverse the whole thing? Can we undo what happened to us?
That's actually a really great question because, thankfully, yes, we can undo it. While we cannot, hop into a time machine and go back to that 5-year-old version of us and undo whatever experiences happened then. But what we can do now as adults is this thing that I like to call reparenting. So as an adult, what you do is you reparent yourself. So you teach yourself, example, let's say if you grew up in an environment that always thought you have to be perfect. It has to be 100 and 99 is not good enough. 99 is basically what happened to the one mark. So as an adult, there's so much of pressure then that you place on yourself because even if you do really good at something, but if it's not perfect, you suddenly just feel it just wasn't good enough. And that can have such a bad negative influence in a way on one's self esteem, one's self confidence. So when you reparent yourself, what you start to teach yourself is I am giving it my best effort, and this is great. This doesn't need to be like perfect. If I just do my best work, that's good enough. So constantly talking to yourself in a way of showing yourself that love, that compassion, patience, kindness that you wanted as a child, but now you need to show that to yourself as an adult. So a lot of the times, I actually meet people who say that voice, like in their head, the one that's saying, "Oh, you didn't do a good enough job."
Yeah, I keep repeating, you know.
And when I asked them, okay, but whose voice is that actually? Like, who does that sound like? And sometimes they might say, oh gosh, that's actually my mom. Growing up, that was my mom. And now that's just how I talk to myself. But
Oh.
then, you know, I just explore with them. Did you like hearing that as a child? And it's always, no, I hated it. It made me feel so
Mm.
terrible. And then the next question is, so what's the reason why you keep talking to yourself like that now as an adult? And then they get it, which is they are talking to themselves the way that their parents spoke to them, but they did not like that at all growing up. So
Mm.
reparenting is, how did you want your parents to talk to you as a child? Start talking to yourself like that. Because the
Mm.
more that you can reparent, the more that you can become aware of what hurt you, what caused that emotional wound. Well, number one, you're acknowledging that you have an emotional wound. So when you acknowledge the wound, you can heal the wound. But if you don't acknowledge the wound, you're basically going to go on your entire life just bleeding, but not even knowing that you're bleeding. So you're just on automatic behavior mode, but you don't realize that it's not helpful.
Mm. I see. But isn't it difficult, like, to talk to yourself? Like, how do you cut it? Like, how do you break the voice? Just do it. That's all.
So one aspect is becoming aware, right? So when we
Mm,
become aware, first you need to reflect. And like I said, it has to start off with just reflecting on what is their emotional wound. So, for instance, once
mm,
they realize, hey, I keep talking to myself so critically, and this started from my childhood because my mom or dad or
mm,
whoever was the main caregiver was talking to them in that manner. Then what they learn is, okay,
mm,
this was done to me, this has
mm,
really hurt me,
mm,
but I'm going to make a conscious decision to no
mm,
longer keep myself in that cycle anymore. And a really good way to break out of that is meditation, a journal on forgiveness, because when you acknowledge the pain that was caused by a parent, it's also important for you to learn to forgive. Because if you don't forgive that parent in a way, you're going to keep holding that anger, that pain within you. So, an aspect there is
mm,
you want to be able to create good self care habits. So, for instance, if you're an adult and you feel that every time you're upset, you're just going to go out and have a drink,
mm,
that's not a healthy coping habit. That's not healthy at all. So, as an adult, if you can start to teach yourself, hey, I am going to do what I like to do as a child. Maybe you really like to paint, but as you grew older, you just stopped doing it. See, it's important to reconnect to that inner child. And when you reconnect to that inner child, you can also start to reparent that inner child because you're always giving yourself a lot of love, kindness, positive encouragement.
So basically, first reflecting, being aware of it, and meditation would help in awareness. And another way is to journal. Journaling helps a lot. And yeah, and acknowledge the child in you and doing things that you like as a child, right? And it seems like we all have this inner child inside of us that even though we are 80, 70, there's always a child for us to care for inside.
Yes, definitely. That inner child. And that's so important to actually tune into that inner child just to have fun, right? As adults, sometimes we get so wrapped up in this responsibilities and, that adult life. But when is the last time that we did something that was just fun and it just made us laugh? That can be so beneficial. And another aspect could also just be asking yourself as an adult, this thoughts that I'm having or this behavior that I'm doing, is it helpful to me? Like, is it helpful to where I want to get to in my life? So,
Mm,
whenever you can just ask yourself that, is it helpful? And if the answer by any chance is no, then there you have it. You already know, okay, I'm doing something that's actually hurting me.
right. So, can I also conclude this way? Example: if an adult themselves who went through tough times during their childhood and they have inner child wound by themselves, and they are now perhaps 50, 60 years old, and now they are not having a very good relationship with their children. Can I say, by healing themselves as an adult, healing their inner child wound, they can also improve the relationship with their children?
It's a possibility, but an aspect there to also take into consideration is that if they are well in their 70s, for example, right? Well, I'm assuming now that their children are also grown adults.
Yeah.
So the parent might suddenly at that age work on themselves and they might realize, oh, all of these things that I did had a very negative consequence with my own children. But
Mhm.
realizing that the children also now need to accept this person and their forgiveness, meaning, okay, I accept that you see all of the pain that you've caused me, and I'm willing to actually forgive you and work on our relationship, then yes, because you need the other person to also be willing to forgive you, to work on the relationship together. But if the child, who probably by now is no longer a child, right, could be well into their 40s, if they say, oh, I'm so sorry, but that ship has sailed, it's
Yeah.
too late now, then basically what that parent has done is, yes, they've acknowledged it, they've worked on themselves, but this child who is now 40 years old has made a decision for themselves, which is, I don't want you in my life anymore.
Mm, I see. So I would say sometimes we only can control things that we can do for ourselves. At the end of the day, we can't force things through if things are not within our control.
Yes, the only thing that we can ever control is what we do, what we say, what we think, what we watch. Those are the things that are within our control. But we can't control like what someone else gonna think, how are they gonna feel, what are they gonna do. So that's where it can become so important to learn what's your boundary, and anytime that you notice, okay, maybe I am crossing my own boundary because I'm doing something that I don't want to do, then that's important to take accountability and
Mm,
to be responsible. Because again, the only
mm,
person that can control what you are doing is you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very true then. So at the end of the day, I personally like from what I've learned here and what you have described. It's more than just applying this to parenting as a topic. The concept itself has a lot to do with personal development.
Definitely. It's all
Okay.
about becoming a lot more self aware and also just having that growth factor.
Mm, right. So yeah, I think we have really learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot, at least because I've been jotting down notes. Because I myself will go through clients who would have issues with children communicating with their own children and things like that, and they didn't understand why. And one of the very good example was when you describe about aggressive children and how to divert their attention and stuff. Sounds like a good idea to put them on sports and things like that. So
Yes, definitely.
I think it's about time for us to wrap this up. So guys, whoever is still watching right now, if you have any questions, okay, feel free to write it down in the comment below. Or if not, if things are quite personal, okay, and you do not want to talk about it openly, feel free, okay, to contact Shireen personally at this number, okay. If you have more specific, more personal questions, perhaps you can speak to her directly and her personal contact. She would be able to help you in terms of quite many other aspects as well, right? So yeah, you can contact her in here. So as a conclusion, right, for what I've really learned in this session is that parenting is so important. Okay, not just for adults ourselves, but also for the children. It's life basically. It's a process of growth, and the process of growth itself never ends until we go 6 feet under. So it's really so important, and I think yeah, we all need to understand the meaning of parenting. It's not just for children, but it's also for adults, and we understand from here the consequences of parenting. If ineffective parenting happen to any one of us, the consequences is so big. It will affect our social life, our relationship, how we interact with people. And I think for myself is the relationship with ourselves. That is the biggest problem, and I think the scariest thing that I would be afraid of, relationship with myself. So that's it. And most and last but not the least is that ineffective parenting can be undone. And I would say from your way of describing it, like how you reflect on things, and how you should be aware of all these small little things of how you are reacting to situations, and how you can meditate and journal. These methods are what I see. It's a kind of like holistic way of overcoming this ineffective parenting for ourselves. And it can be done, most importantly. We cannot say that it's a done deal, whatever that happened in the past, right?
Yes, so definitely being mindful in a way. And when you're being mindful, you're journaling, you're meditating, you're being very present. And like you said, even if something's done in the past, it doesn't mean that as an adult we can't undo it, because we can reparent ourselves. So as an adult, it's actually really great to know that we have a responsibility as adults to, fix ourselves or heal ourselves. We need to know what's our wound and how can we actually help ourselves so that we're not bleeding onto others, we're not hurting other people because of something that happened in our childhood.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is wonderful. I mean, this actually, to be honest, these are the key messages that I think I think everyone should know about. Saying that it's kind of like telling everyone there's hope. Even if mistakes were made in the past, there is hope still. And to understand, and besides that, right? If we understand and educate ourselves more of parenting, not only we can help our future generation, but we can also help ourselves. So I think it's a very, very important message that everyone should know. Okay, so yeah, I think it's about time to wrap this up. So, Shireen, I really appreciate you joining me tonight, and you are actually my first guest for the whole show.
Oh,
And
I'm so honored.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so guys, if you're watching this and if you really like this, okay, so please share this out, and follow Shireen's page on Instagram. You can see her page at the bottom, and time to time she will also share out lots of content, and to kick and tickle your awareness, I would say. For myself, at least, that's how I see. Like, I follow you. Sometimes I read about what you write, and it kind of like tickle my mind. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. So I think it's one of the reasons why we follow contents like what you deliver. So I
Thank
think it's
you.
very useful. And guys, feel free to follow Shireen at Instagram. And of course, if you want to know more about what other topics that I will be sharing, follow my page. For those of you guys who are already at my page, okay, please also be aware that on Monday I'll be having another talk, which is with Mindy. I think that you guys would have already seen my posts on my page. Okay, so be back here at 8:30 on Monday. I'll be talking about spirituality with Mindy. Okay. Once again, Shireen, thank you a lot for your time this evening.
Thanks so much for having me. You're very welcome. I've had such a great time on your show.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, then. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye.